Her daughter threw out her allergy meds then laughed when she couldn't breathe. Eleanor Briggs, retired nurse and legal trustee, didn't panic. Shannon giggled, called it a mint mix-up, and went back to sipping rosé. By week's end, the house was in escrow land, not under Shannon's name. She thought Eleanor was too old to fight back. But Eleanor didn't fight. She signed, sold, and vanished with the deed. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The kitchen smelled like rosemary chicken and warm cornbread when Eleanor poured herself a glass of iced tea and reached for her antihistaminic unconscious ritual, the way brushing your teeth becomes muscle memory. She twisted the cap off the amber bottle on the counter, dry swallowed the pill, and slid the container back into the drawer beside the silverware. Dinner was Shannon's Friendsgiving preview night, an exhausting excuse to invite over neighbors and show off seasonal tablescapes. Eleanor had cooked most of the meal, of course. Shannon didn't like touching raw meat. "It ruins my nails," she always said, laughing like it was charming. By the time the last candle was lit and the guests started to gather around the table, Eleanor's throat was itching. At first, she thought it was the dry air or maybe the dust from the decorative pine cones, but within minutes, her skin started to prickle. She shifted in her seat, trying not to make a scene, her hand reaching instinctively for her wrist where hives were rising in angry, red patches. Shannon noticed. "Oh my God, you're blotchy." She leaned over and giggled. "Did you use a new soap again? You know how delicate old skin is." Eleanor opened her mouth to speak, but her voice came out thin, rasping. Her breathing tightened. She pushed back her chair, chest rising faster now. Cassie, seated across the table, was already on her feet. "Grandmotto, you have your EpiPen?" It was Maribel, seated beside her with a nurse's instinct, who was already pulling the auto-injector from Eleanor's purse before Eleanor could nod. "You're going to be okay. Breathe through your nose," she said, her voice low, steady. One sharp stab to the thigh, and Eleanor felt the rush her heart racing, her vision clearing just enough to see Shannon across the table, holding her wine glass like it was all some kind of performance. "Relax," Shannon said, half laughing. "It was just a mint. I thought it'd be funny. Like kill, it's not poison." The silence that followed cracked like ice. Justin stood frozen between them, a nervous smile tugging at his mouth. "She's okay now, right? No harm done?" Cassie spun on him. "Are you serious?" Eleanor didn't speak. Not yet. Her hand trembled slightly as she dabbed at her lip with a napkin. Her throat was sore, but not closed. Not anymore. 10 minutes later, the guests had cleared out early. Awkward excuses about work in the morning. Shannon pouted as she loaded the dishwasher, still insisting it had been just a mix-up. Eleanor sat in the quiet of her bedroom, now changed into a cotton nightgown, knees still weak from the adrenaline. Cassie knocked and entered with something in her hand. "I went looking," she said, voice low. "This was in the guest room trash." She held up the real bottle, still sealed, label crisp and unbroken. The antihistamines Eleanor kept religiously, the ones her allergist had warned her not to miss. Eleanor turned the bottle in her hand. "She threw out my meds. On purpose." Cassie nodded slowly. "She said it was a joke, but that's not a joke." "No," Eleanor said, her voice regaining weight. "A joke doesn't end with an EpiPen." Downstairs, laughter drifted up faintly. Shannon was on the phone, probably posting to her stories, spinning the narrative. Maribel appeared in the doorway, her voice quiet but steely. "You need to stop pretending she's careless," she said. "She's hostile. There's a difference." Eleanor looked at the pill bottle in her hand, then at the faint red welt still on her wrist. "I know," she whispered. She opened the drawer of her bedside table, pulled out a yellow file folder labeled Trust, Briggs House, and set it on her lap. She stared at it for a long moment before slowly flipping it open, her thumb tracing the bold black ink of her own signature. Outside, a car door slammed. Shannon's laughter rose again, high-pitched and tinny. Eleanor didn't look up. She just said, without emotion, "Tomorrow, we start cleaning house." The next morning, Eleanor sat at the far corner of the local credit union's cafe linen slacks, blue blouse, leather binder zipped tight in front of her. Her lipstick was a shade darker than usual, deliberate. Her tea sat untouched. Across from her, Howard McCann opened a manila folder and slid it toward her like a man used to delivering final decisions. Still under the trust, he said, tapping the document with one thick finger. Titled to Briggs Living Trust. Beneficiaries listed. For now. Eleanor adjusted her reading glasses, though she didn't need them to see the bold name typed in the trustee line. Eleanor J. Briggs, sole grantor, sole authority. Then it's time, she said, her voice smooth but pointed. Initiate the silent clause. Strip them out. Howard gave her a look, not questioning her, but weighing the risk. They'll find out eventually. She smiled faintly. Eventually is too late for them to stop anything. He clicked his pen and filled in the revocation line with neat strokes, then slid her the signature page. As Eleanor signed, a slow exhale left her chest. Not relief, not yet. Just confirmation that the next door was open. Back at the house, the late morning quiet hummed with the sound of the dishwasher cycling. Eleanor stepped lightly across the kitchen tile, noting every small mark she once cleaned, every cabinet she refinished by hand. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage she'd been shoved off of. On the kitchen island sat a stack of delivery boxes, Shannon's latest impulse, a 5-tier shelf for Cassie's room, a velvet bench for the foot of their bed, and a live, laugh, love canvas in gold cursive. She never bought furniture that wasn't meant to be seen by others. Eleanor didn't touch a thing. She moved instead to the downstairs study her space, never redecorated, filled with oak bookshelves and the scent of lemon oiland, picked up the cordless phone. Maribel, she said as soon as it rang through. Do you still know that realtor you trust, the one who handled the Kingsley sale last year? Elaine? Of course. You want me to call her? Not yet, Eleanor said. But soon. I just wanted to know she's still sharp. Maribel didn't ask more than she needed to. She only replied, You always warned them, Elle. They just didn't think you meant it. No, Eleanor said, eyes drifting to the framed photo on the wall, her and Justin at his college graduation, both beaming. They never read what I actually signed. Hours later, with the house empty, Shannon at brunch, Justin at his monthly wellness coaching session, Eleanor met Elaine in the driveway. No for sale signs, no contracts yet, just interior photography. Elaine carried her camera like a weapon, heels clicking across the flagstone as she stepped inside. You sure you want me to shoot it with their stuff in it? I want it to look lived in, Eleanor replied. Just not by them. They moved room to room. Wide shots of the vaulted ceilings, the hand-laid tile Eleanor had chosen years ago, and the refinished cabinets that Shannon now called hers on Instagram. Eleanor stayed out of frame, watching from doorways, invisible and deliberate. Upstairs, Cassie's door was cracked. Eleanor peeked in bed made, notebooks stacked neatly. No clutter, just soft lavender scent. Eleanor closed it gently. That room wasn't part of the sale. Not yet. As Elaine reviewed the photos on her camera, she paused at one of the kitchen island, the light falling perfectly across the granite, gleaming and unbothered. This'll list fast, she said. Places like this don't stay on the market long, especially when it's clear the owner cared. Eleanor smiled just slightly. That's the idea. Before Elaine left, she looked Eleanor in the eye. They don't know yet, do they? No, Eleanor said, voice calm. But they will. That night, Shannon returned home with a new soy wax candle and 3 shopping bags. She lit the candle on the stove and tossed her keys in the fruit bowl, humming. Justin trailed behind her, phone in hand, complaining about how expensive HVAC repairs were in the summer. Neither of them noticed that the picture frames in the hallway had been rearranged to reduce family photos. Neither of them noticed the faint, fresh scent of real estate staging spray in the living room. Neither of them noticed that every light bulb was now warm-toned, perfect for listing photos. But Cassie did. From the top of the stairs, she stood frozen, watching them as if they were walking into someone else's house. Because they were. The scent of simmering pot roast drifted through the house, slow and savory, Eleanor's recipe, the one Shannon had once mocked as too Depression era. But now, as guests filtered in through the back patio for Justin's birthday cookout, it was Eleanor who had the apron on, her hands dusted with flour as she kneaded dough for buttermilk biscuits. Shannon breezed in from the garage, high heels clacking, holding a tray of novelty cupcakes with neon blue frosting. She caught Eleanor mid-stir at the stove and raised an eyebrow. Try not to spill, okay? The backsplash stains easy. Eleanor didn't answer. She didn't look up. The backsplash Shannon was worried about? Eleanor had picked it out 5 years ago. Paid for it with her own checkbook while Shannon was still deciding whether to spell Briggs in cursive or block letters on their Christmas stockings. Behind her, the pantry door was ajar. Eleanor walked over to retrieve the baking soda and paused. Something was off. The rows of canned goods had been rearranged, her spices consolidated into a single basket. A small laminated label stuck to one of the lower shelves read in bubbly script, Grandma's shelf. Not Eleanor's, not shared. Just a tucked-away corner like a bin at a food bank. She didn't say anything. Justin walked in, carrying a cooler. Whoa, Shan. I thought you said no onions in the dip. You know Greg's allergic. Shannon waved him off. That's why I bought store-bought. I don't know what she's making over there. Something old-fashioned. Let her have her fun. She's making your birthday dinner, Cassie said quietly from the corner, drying her hands on a towel. Shannon flashed a brittle smile. Sweetie, I'm just saying it's her thing. She gets weird if you interfere. That's when Justin turned toward his mother, gesturing toward the oven. Can't you just let her run the house her way? It's been working, hasn't it? There was no heat in his voice, just resignation, the kind of tone a man uses when he wants to sound supportive without inviting an argument. Eleanor kept folding dough, each press of her palms steadier than the last. This isn't her house, she murmured under her breath, though no one heard her. A few minutes later, while Eleanor was brushing egg wash on the biscuits, Cassie tugged gently at her sleeve. Can I show you something upstairs? They slipped away from the noise and stepped into Cassie's room. The door clicked shut behind them. I need to tell you something, Cassie said, her voice barely above a whisper. They don't talk about you like your family anymore. They talk about you like... She trailed off. Like I'm a guest? Eleanor offered. Cassie's eyes welled up. Number. Like you're a burden, like they're waiting. Eleanor sat down on the edge of the bed and exhaled. Not shocked, not hurt, just affirmed. She'd known. But it sounded different from Cassie's mouth, like truth laid bare. Back downstairs, laughter rolled through the hall. Eleanor returned to the kitchen, lifted the roast out of the oven, and plated it with slow precision. She garnished it with rosemary, then wiped the edge of the platter with a cloth until it gleamed. In the dining room, Shannon was holding court in front of two new neighbors Eleanor hadn't seen before. One of them in a blazer, clearly someone Shannon hoped would notice her curated centerpiece. As Eleanor walked past with the platter, Shannon smiled wide and called out, Don't worry, she's housebroken. The table chuckled, awkward and unsure. Eleanor placed the dish down gently in the center, adjusted the silver tongs, and stepped back. She said nothing, not a single word. She just stood there, expression unreadable, hands folded in front of her like a server waiting for a cue. Cassie watched her grandmother closely. Not her face, but her eyes. She could tell something had hardened behind them, something brittle but precise. And when Eleanor finally moved, it wasn't to join the table. It was to walk quietly into the study, close the door, and open her email. Subject: Elaine. Proceed with staging schedule. Body: confirm availability for this Friday. They'll be out. It's time. The cafe was quiet that morning, just the sound of ceramic mugs clinking against saucers and the low hiss of the espresso machine steaming milk behind the counter. Eleanor chose a window seat with full view of the parking lot. She liked to see who came and went. Howard arrived precisely on time, coat draped over one arm, a navy folder tucked under the other. He didn't bother with pleasantries. They were well past that now. I brought both sets, he said, placing the folder between them and flipping it open. Purchase agreement and trust authorization. I had them notarized in advance. All that's left is your signature. Eleanor took her tea slowly, fingers wrapped around the warm porcelain. Earl Grey. No sugar. How's the buyer? She asked, almost idly. Pre-approved, cash-backed, and quiet, Howard said. She's looking for a turnkey property in a stable school district, closing in 3 weeks if we move today. Eleanor didn't nod, didn't blink. She picked up the pen, turned to the last page, and signed with steady strokes. Sell it out from under them, she said, setting the pen down like a final chess piece. Howard didn't smile. He didn't need to. This was a contract, not a celebration. Outside the cafe window, a young couple walked by pushing a stroller. They paused to admire the seasonal display in front of the florist shop next Dortney pumpkins, bronze mums, a chalkboard sign that read, "New beginnings are still beginnings." Eleanor finished her tea in silence. Back at the house, Shannon was staging her own version of permanence. The mid-morning light flooded the kitchen where she hovered with her ring light and phone stand, snapping photos of fresh tulips in a white pitcher and Eleanor's pot roast, leftovers artfully arranged on stoneware. Her voice drifted down the hallway in a sing-song chirp. Just a little number homeowner life glam. This kitchen is my happy place, honestly. She uploaded the post with a soft filter, slapped a few hashtags underneath, and set her phone down just as a notification popped up. Maribel commented on your post. Enjoy it while you can. Shannon frowned at the screen, then rolled her eyes. Boomers and their weird shade, she muttered. Upstairs, Eleanor watched the entire post unfold from Cassie's phone. She really believes it's hers, Cassie said, her face unreadable. Eleanor stood in the doorway, arms folded. That's the thing about borrowed spaces. People forget who unlocked the door. Cassie turned to look at her. And now? Eleanor's voice was calm. Now I'm locking it behind me. Later that afternoon, Eleanor opened her laptop and clicked through the updated documents Howard had already filed with the county. Her name still sat at the top, bold and unchallenged. The trust authorization stamped executed. The sale contract tagged pending. The house was already shifting from memory to transaction. And still, downstairs, Shannon was posting selfies with fresh tea towels and calling it permanence. That night, while Eleanor loaded the dishwasher with surgical efficiency, Justin came in, scratching his head absently. Hey, did you move the lawn furniture? I thought it was out back. It's in the garage, Eleanor said, not turning. Elaine suggested it for staging. Too much clutter distracts buyers. Justin froze. Staging? Like real estate staging? Eleanor finally turned, drying her hands on a linen cloth. You'll see, she said, her voice like the calm before a legal storm. The email came through at 8:03 a.m. subject line, simple and direct. Offer received, $12,000, over asking. Buyer ready to escrow immediately. Eleanor stood at the kitchen sink when she read it, steam rising from the ceramic mug in her hand. The sunlight caught her silver hair just so, catching strands like wire. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. She just stared at the screen for a moment longer, then tapped the reply button. Proceed. Accept. Lock it in. EJB. From the dining room, Shannon's voice chirped through the floor plan like a wine-fueled wind chime. She was FaceTiming a friend. Vivian, maybe, the one with the fake tan and the real estate license she never used. No, we're thinking sage green for the lower cabinets, like a rustic modern vibe. I saw this whole thing on Pinterest with matte brass pulls. We'll just use some of Grandma's money to do it right. I mean, she owes us for everything she's put us through. Cassie, who had been stacking dishes in the side hutch, stilled. She turned toward the voice with a slow, deliberate glance. Shannon laughed on the call. Justin says the backsplash has to go. But I'm like, honey, you don't even know what a backsplash is. Cassie slipped out the side door. Upstairs, Eleanor was already packing. Not boxes, just essentials. A suitcase open on the bed. Her soft sweaters neatly folded. Toothbrush case laid out like a hotel setup. Maribel had texted that her guest suite was prepped and ready. You'll be more comfortable here while the chaos unfolds. Doors always open. Eleanor zipped the suitcase halfway, then paused at her vanity, adjusting a pearl earring. In the mirror, she saw her room the way someone else might. Tidy, lived in, untouched by pretense. Not sentimental, not cluttered, ready. From the hallway, she heard Shannon again, this time on speakerphone, closer. She'll be gone soon anyway, she was saying. One fall and it's hospice. Maybe sooner if she keeps refusing her pills. Honestly, it's cruel to keep her here. She doesn't even use the kitchen anymore. Eleanor stood just inside the bedroom door, hidden from view, arms crossed. She didn't flinch, not even a blink. Justin mumbled something in the background. Eleanor couldn't make out the words, only the tone soft, useless. She waited until the conversation ended, then closed her suitcase and clicked the latch. That afternoon, Howard's second email arrived. Escrow opened, confirmation attached, possession date locked. Eleanor printed it. She slid the page into the yellow folder marked Briggs Trust and tucked it under her arm. Then she descended the stairs and moved into the study, where Cassie was waiting with a notebook open on her lap. "Is it done?" Cassie asked. Eleanor handed her the printed email. Cassie read it, eyes wide. "They don't even know." "They don't need to," Eleanor said. "Not yet." From the other room, Shannon shouted, "Who left the dishwasher open? I almost broke my foot." Cassie rolled her eyes. She acts like she owns the place. Eleanor looked toward the kitchen archway, her voice dry. She's about to find out she doesn't. That evening, Shannon staged a wine and cheese board in the backyard for content. Justin grilled steaks. Cassie stayed mostly silent, watching from a swing bench as her mother recorded slow-motion shots of melted brie oozing on rustic crackers. "I just love this house," Shannon said to her phone. "It's where we're building our future." Cassie stared across the yard at Eleanor, who sat with a book, seemingly absorbed in a passage. But every few seconds, her finger tapped the edge of a manila envelope resting beneath the cushion beside her. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was leverage. Major twist number 1. The house has entered escrow, officially sold. Eleanor holds the deed. The buyer holds the contract. And Shannon is planning renovations in a home that's already being taken from under her feet. It began with a knock Eleanor had been expecting. Elaine stood at the door in pressed slacks and low heels, clipboard in hand, flanked by a soft-spoken woman in her 30s with tortoiseshell glasses and a messenger bag slung over her shoulder. "Inspection day," Elaine said simply, keeping her voice low. Eleanor nodded once. "We've got about 90 minutes. Inside, Shannon was pacing in the kitchen, waving her phone like a wand. "I called the warranty company. They said the fridge still qualifies for a compressor upgrade. We just need to schedule wait. Is that them already?" Elaine and the inspector entered from the side door, walking in as if they belonged, which legally they now partially did. Eleanor stepped forward before Shannon could reach them. "Could you do me a favor?" Eleanor said, pulling her coat off the hook by the garage door. "Pick up lunch from Casa Verde. Your spinach wrap thing. I'll Venmo you." Shannon blinked. "No? I'd do it myself, but I've got a migraine coming on, and Cassie's at school." Shannon hesitated, suspicion flickering behind her mascaraed eyes. Eleanor added, "Take my car. It's already warmed up." The keys landed in Shannon's palm with a light clink. "Fine, but I'm using the aux cable this time. Your jazz station gives me anxiety." As the garage door rumbled shut, Eleanor turned to Elaine. "You have full run of the house." The buyer and inspector moved quickly. Upstairs, the inspector clicked open cabinetry and took measurements of vents and electrical panels. Downstairs, the buyer stepped barefoot onto the hardwood in the dining room, smiling at the natural light pouring through the windows. "She loves the bones of the place," Elaine murmured. "Says it reminds her of her grandmother's house, but better cared for." Eleanor didn't respond. Her eyes followed the inspector as he walked through the kitchen with purpose, lifting sink handles, checking the gas line on the stove. 10 minutes in, the back door opened. Justin. He entered holding a small box of pool shock and a confused expression. "Is the HVAC guy here early?" He stopped in the living room when he saw the inspector crouched near the fireplace, flashlight out. "What's going on?" Eleanor set her book on the end table, cool as a lake before a storm. "Inspection." Justin frowned. "Inspection for what?" "Buyer wanted a full structural review before closing," Elaine said. Matter of fact, barely glancing up. Justin laughed, the sound brittle. "Buyer? What buyer?" A moment passed. Eleanor looked him in the eye, voice quiet but ironclad. "We're downsizing." His smile faltered. "You're joking, right?" She didn't answer. Instead, she turned toward the window, watching the buyer step into the backyard, hands tucked in her jacket pockets as she admired the stonework. Elaine handed the clipboard to the inspector and nodded toward the front room. "Let's check attic access next." Justin stood there, arms limp at his sides, the box of pool chemicals slowly tilting in his grip. "Mom," he said, his voice suddenly thin. "This is our house." "No," Eleanor said softly, not even turning. "It's mine. You just forgot that." Through the window, the buyer looked back toward the house and smiled. She had no idea whose illusions were unraveling inside. And Eleanor had no intention of stopping the clock now. Shannon burst through the front door 20 minutes after the inspection wrapped, carrying a half-smashed spinach wrap and a drink sloshing over its plastic lid. "You sent me out during a showing?" she shouted from the entryway, eyes sweeping across the living room like she was looking for a mess to blame. Eleanor was seated in the study, flipping through a magazine with deliberate calm. She didn't even look up. Shannon stormed in, eyebrows drawn and voice sharp. "What is going on?" Eleanor closed the magazine slowly, as if marking her place in time as much as on the page. "I'm selling my property." There was no venom in the words, no raised voice, just clarity, sharp as glass. Shannon blinked, momentarily thrown off by the calm. "You mean this house?" She pointed downward, as if there might be another one hiding beneath the floorboards. "The one we live in?" Eleanor nodded once. "Correct." Shannon's mouth hung open. Then she scoffed. "You can't just what? Kick us out? We've been here for years. We built our lives here. You've lost it." From the top of the stairs, Cassie appeared briefly, watching the scene unfold. Her eyes met Eleanor's for half a second before she disappeared down the hall, door closing behind her with a soft but unmistakable click. Eleanor's phone buzzed in her cardigan pocket. She didn't check it. Justin barreled in from the backyard, phone already pressed to his ear. "Howard's not picking up. He's probably in court or something. He'll clear this up." "You think Howard doesn't know?" Eleanor asked. Justin froze. "Wait. He knew? He helped? He drafted it." Shannon's face went red, a flush crawling up her neck like heat from a boil. She grabbed a drawer from the hallway console and slammed it shut, the echo reverberating through the plaster like a starting gun. "This is elder abuse," she yelled, eyes wild. "You're not well. This is coercion. You've always hated me, and now you're punishing Justin to get to me." Eleanor stood. Slowly, with the steadiness of someone who has nothing left to defend, she walked to the secretary desk in the corner and opened a drawer. From it, she pulled a single sheet of crisp paper in a transparent plastic sleeve. She walked it over and laid it gently on the dining room table. "Is that what the judge will think?" she asked. Shannon didn't move at first. Then she stepped forward, squinting at the document. Her mouth moved silently, tracing the legal language, the stamped notary seal, the unmistakable title, Briggs Living Trust, updated beneficiary exclusion and property transfer clause. Her face drained of color. "I don't understand," she said, voice faltering. "No," Eleanor said. "You never did." From upstairs, a soft dinga text, "Cassie." Eleanor pulled out her phone and read it. "I'm so sorry. I'm staying in my room. I can't watch this." She didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, she returned to her chair in the study, unfolded her glasses, and opened her magazine again. Justin lowered his phone, staring at Eleanor like he was seeing her for the first time. "Mom, this isn't you." Eleanor turned the page. "Then you never knew me at all." By morning, the legal notice was taped squarely on the stainless steel fridge. Door-centered, level, impossible to miss. A copy of the escrow timeline was attached beneath it, signed and stamped. Above the bullet points in bold, notice of possession transfer, 17 days remaining. The kitchen, once curated with curated clutter-succulent pots, mismatched mugs, candles with hollowed wick snow felt staged again, clinical. Every object had intention. Every word on that fridge cut through the silence like a knife through fondant. Justin stood in front of the notice, eyes scanning the paper again, as if reading it slower would make it kinder. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. "Where are we supposed to go?" Eleanor didn't look up from the table, where she was quietly folding dish towels into a cardboard box. "I suggest," she said evenly, "you start with somewhere you pay for." Justin winced like he'd been slapped. "You know, we can't afford rent around here. We thought this was permanent." Eleanor folded another towel, the gesture precise, almost reverent. "That was your first mistake. Assuming what isn't yours is permanent." The front door opened. Maribel entered, arms full of flattened moving boxes, her face set in a look that warned, "Don't try me today." "I brought the wardrobe ones too," she said, setting them down beside the pantry. "Easier for bulkier items." Shannon appeared from around the corner like she'd been waiting for a cue. "Oh, you brought reinforcements," she sneered. "How poetic." Maribel didn't flinch. "Number I brought the consequences." Shannon crossed her arms. You always did love playing the part of loyal sidekick. Guess it pays better than dignity. Maribel stepped closer. You think dignity is clinging to a house you never owned. I'm here because Eleanor asked. You don't ask anyone. You expect. Justin murmured. Shan, let it go. But his voice had no force behind it. Shannon turned on her heel and stormed upstairs. The sound of her footsteps too loud, too sharp. Doors opened and slammed. The start of her tantrum, not her packing. Eleanor continued folding in silence. Her phone buzzed on the table. Elaine, realtor. Buyer wants to meet. She's in love with the story of the house, says it feels eldest loved. Wants to see the place again before close. Eleanor read the message twice, then typed back, schedule it for Friday. She slid the phone into her cardigan pocket and reached for another box. Cassie appeared in the hallway, holding a stack of books. Can I put these in the car? She asked quietly. Eleanor nodded. Passenger seat. Don't stack them on the coat box. Cassie hesitated. Are they really going to leave? They'll have no choice. Eleanor didn't say it as a threat. She said it like gravity. From upstairs, music started blaring Shannon's playlist, the one with the curated image of high heels and a champagne flute. Eleanor didn't look up. Justin, still standing at the fridge, finally pulled the notice down and stared at it like it was written in another language. The paper fluttered in his shaking hand. Why didn't you just tell us? He whispered. Why like this? Eleanor paused, met his gaze fully. Because you wouldn't have heard me, she said. You only see things when they're nailed to your door. Outside, wind swept across the lawn. The oak tree creaked against the side fence. In the distance, a delivery truck pulled to the curb and idled more packages for a house that wasn't theirs. And inside, the countdown ticked louder. By Thursday night, the house looked like a war zone. Not from boxes or movers, but from deliberate negligence. Shannon had stopped pretending. A full sink of greasy pans sat untouched. The entryway bench was buried under shoes. Half-used candles flickered near wilting flowers. Someone Shannon had left a trail of glitter from a half-spilled makeup bag across the stairs. Vibe clutter, she said, smirking at Cassie. It makes the house feel lived in. Eleanor didn't respond. She just walked into the study and quietly dialed Elaine. Bring the buyer through anyway, she said. And do me a favor, walk them through the kitchen last. There was a pause. Then, understood. After she hung up, Eleanor opened a drawer and removed a discreet, white box. She'd ordered it weeks ago, just in case. 2 compact wireless cameras, motion-activated, with cloud backup. One went above the pantry door. The other in the hall, angled at the front entry and dining room. Maribel came by that evening and helped Eleanor stage a backup plan. Fresh flowers hidden in the mudroom. A neutral scent diffuser stashed behind the guest bathroom mirror. Silent countermeasures. Clean lines. Clean air. Friday arrived. By noon, the house reeked of charred garlic toast. The toaster oven door hung ajar, smoke tendrils still curling upward toward the ceiling. I was trying to help, Shannon said, waving her phone through the air like it might neutralize the smell. If you'd told me the buyer hated garlic, maybe I wouldn't have burned it. Cassie stood by the window, eyes narrowed. You left it in there for 20 minutes. Shannon opened every window on the ground floor, even though the outside air was damp with cedar pollen. Wind swept in, scattering papers and the scent of scorched butter across the house. Just trying to keep it from being so sterile, she muttered. The doorbell rang. Elaine entered with the buyer, both dressed professionally. The buyer smiled as she stepped into the entryway, taking in the natural light, the flooring, the air tinted with something acrid but not enough to deter. Eleanor stepped forward, calm and collected. Welcome back. Elaine walked the buyer through slowly, ignoring the faint smell. They moved from the living room to the sunlit office, then upstairs to the primary suite and guest bath. Eleanor watched them climb the stairs, then turned to find Shannon lurking near the dining room, arms crossed. You can open windows, Eleanor said, but it doesn't clear what's already stuck to the walls. Shannon glared. You mean the smell? I mean the damage, Eleanor said. Then she turned away. Downstairs, the buyer returned with an impressed smile. It's even better than I remembered, she said. So much character, so clearly loved. Elaine gave Eleanor a look that said, she's in. After they left, Eleanor returned to the study and opened her laptop. The camera footage had already uploaded. There was Shannon, caught mid-toast charring, then dramatically flinging the window open. There she was again, yanking flowers from a vase and dumping them in the trash. Elaine texted 5 minutes later. Buyer's ready to close early. Wants to be in before school starts. We can move up the timeline if you want. Howard called that evening. I reviewed the footage Elaine sent me. You want to sue for interference or obstruction? Eleanor stared out the window where Shannon's pink flamingo garden stake still pierced the mulch like a cheap insult. No, she said, voice steady. I don't want to fight. I want them gone. Howard's voice was low. Then we'll accelerate. I'll prepare the revised close. Eleanor looked over at Cassie, curled up on the couch with a book, earphones in. How soon can it be done? 7 days, Howard said. If the buyer's willing. She is. Eleanor hung up. Outside, Shannon and Justin were dragging patio cushions in from the rain, bickering quietly. Shannon kicked a planter in frustration. Justin said nothing. They had no idea they'd just lost a week they didn't have. The contract closed electronically at 2:46 p.m. on a Tuesday. Eleanor sat in Maribel's guest room, legs crossed, laptop propped neatly on the bed tray. She clicked the final signature field and watched the screen refresh. Transaction complete. Possession transfer in 5 days. No champagne, no ceremony, just silence, broken only by the soft hum of a ceiling fan and the hollow thud of her pulse in her ears. A different kind of victory earned with restraint, not noise. Meanwhile, back at the house, Shannon was uploading photos of the backyard roses. The caption read, "Summer's last bloom. Feeling so lucky to have landed in our forever home. Number roots run deep. Number grateful heart." Eleanor saw the post 5 minutes after it went live. She didn't bother to screenshot it. She didn't need to. That afternoon, Justin stood in the garage, scrolling quietly through rental listings on his phone, thumb hovering over one in Round Rock that allowed dogs and offered 2 free months for qualified tenants. He hadn't shown it to Shannon. Not yet. Instead, he sent a link to his own email with the subject line, Plan B. Inside, Cassie was folding laundry in the corner of her room, earbuds half in. The energy in the house had turned metallic, tight and buzzing like the pause before a thunderclap. She kept catching herself holding her breath. She knocked gently on Eleanor's door before dinner. "Can I come with you?" she asked. After the move, Eleanor was brushing her hair. She paused and turned to face her granddaughter in the mirror. "I mean, visit," Cassie added quickly, her voice small. "I just don't want you to cut me off, too." Eleanor set the brush down and turned. "I'm not cutting you off," she said. "I'm cutting you loose." Cassie blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means," Eleanor said, voice soft but firm, "you won't have to tiptoe around me anymore. You'll be able to find me without going through them." Cassie looked at the floor and nodded, tears threatening but not falling. Eleanor stood and gently touched her shoulder. "I'll always answer when it's you." Downstairs, Shannon reheated leftovers in the microwave like it was a normal night. She talked loudly to no one in particular about Trader Joe's discontinuing her favorite balsamic glaze. Justin pretended to listen. His thumb hovered over another rental listing. Outside, a large white truck rolled down the street, slowing as it reached their house. Cassie glanced out the front window. "Is that?" Eleanor nodded once. "Staging pickup. They're coming for the buyer's furniture drop-off next. Should we tell them?" Cassie whispered. "They'll know soon enough." As the truck idled in front of the house, a neighbor paused mid-dog walk, curious. Maribel waved from her porch, like she'd been expecting it. Justin came out onto the porch with a half-empty glass of iced tea, saw the logo on the truck door, Lone Star Estate Relocation, and blinked hard. "Hey," he called inside. "Did someone schedule a delivery?" No answer. He looked down at his phone again. This time, he opened the rental listing and started typing out an inquiry. Inside, Eleanor walked to the front door, locked it gently, and pulled the shades closed. Dinner was roast chicken and wilted spinach, the last full meal Eleanor would ever cook in that house. She moved quietly through the kitchen, plating everything with clinical neatness. No garnish, no candles, no jazz playing in the background, just the clink of ceramic, the scrape of silverware. The table was already set by the time Shannon wandered in barefoot, phone in one hand, glass of Merlot in the other. She didn't acknowledge the food or the effort. She sat down hard in her chair and opened Instagram like it was a lifeline. Eleanor served without ceremony. Justin took his seat with a visible stiffness, like he knew something was coming but hoped staying neutral might spare him. Cassie sat at the end of the table, her gaze low, her fork untouched. The silence stretched, until Shannon snapped. "You're ruining our lives!" Her voice cut through the quiet like shattering glass. She slammed her wine glass on the tablinot enough to break it, but enough to spill. Eleanor took a bite of spinach, didn't look up, didn't speak. "You don't even care, do you?" Shannon hissed. "You're just eating like none of this is real. Like we didn't build something here. Like this isn't our home." Still no reply. Justin cleared his throat, tried to soften the edges. "Mom, there has to be another way. Something that lets everyone stay. We can make this work." Eleanor's fork clinked gently against her plate as she cut a piece of chicken. "Where was this?" she said calmly. "When I needed you." Justin opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Cassie finally looked up. "You told her she was replaceable." The room froze. Shannon blinked. "What did you just say?" "You told your friend on speakerphone. That one fall, and she'd be in hospice. I was in the hallway." Cassie's voice didn't rise, but it didn't shake either. "You called her disposable, like old furniture." Eleanor didn't stop eating. She didn't have to. Shannon stood abruptly, chair screeching against the floor. "You ungrateful little." She grabbed her wine glass and hurled it. It missed Eleanor by 2 feet, hit the wall, and exploded in a fan of red and glass. The splash landed on a framed watercolor Eleanor had painted decades ago. Eleanor looked up for the first time all night. She dabbed the corner of her mouth with a napkin. "Now that's a joke." The words dropped like a match in gasoline. Shannon stormed out of the room, footsteps echoing up the stairs like drumbeats. A door slammed seconds later, followed by another. Justin sat there, stunned, hands slack in his lap. Eleanor pushed back her chair, stood, and walked to the study. Her phone buzzed. "Elaine, realtor. Code has been changed. Final lock transfer in 48 hours. Title fully processed." Eleanor replied with one word. "Received." She turned off the dining room light and left the mess for them to clean. They had 48 hours left in a house that no longer recognized them. And now, it knew who its owner really was. Eleanor left just after dawn. Maribel pulled up in her beige SUV as the first blush of sun touched the rooftops, headlights off, engine low. She didn't have to knock Eleanor. Was already standing on the porch with 2 small suitcases and a manila folder tucked under one arm. She wore her gray wool coat, the one she'd saved for travel or funerals. This was, in some ways, both. Inside, the house was still silent except for the ticking of the hallway clock and the low hum of the fridge. Justin and Shannon hadn't come downstairs. They hadn't spoken to her since the night of the wine glass. Cassie waited in the doorway. "You sure you don't want help with the rest?" she asked softly, hands stuffed into the sleeves of an oversized sweatshirt. "There's nothing else," Eleanor said. They stood there for a moment, neither reaching for the other yet. Then Cassie stepped forward, arms wrapping tightly around her grandmother. "I wish I'd lived with you instead," she whispered into Eleanor's shoulder. "All along." Eleanor held her close, not with hesitation, but with the calm of someone who had already let go of what needed leaving. "You still can," she murmured. Cassie pulled back slightly, eyes rimmed red. "You mean it?" Eleanor looked her in the eye. "I'll have space and rules, but I won't make you apologize for being loyal." Maribel emerged from the car, opened the trunk, and began arranging boxes. Nothing frantic, just efficient, practiced motion. Eleanor handed Cassie an envelope. "Don't open it here." Cassie nodded, tucking it into her pocket. From an upstairs window, Shannon watched with narrowed eyes, a coffee mug in hand. Her hair was still pinned from sleep, face bare, phone clutched tightly but unused. Behind her, Justin sat at the edge of their bed, laptop open to a rental application screen, half filled and blinking. Down below, Eleanor stepped off the porch for the last time. She didn't glance back. As Maribel closed the trunk, she gave a nod, part confirmation, part salute. "Ready?" she asked. "Let's go." Cassie stood at the edge of the driveway as the SUV pulled away, hand raised but unmoving. She didn't wave, just watched. The moving truck rolled in 20 minutes later unmarked, efficient. A team of 2 entered with clean gloves and walkie-talkies. They began rearranging furniture, staging art, placing welcome packets on the island countertop. Upstairs, Shannon's voice could be heard snapping at Justin. Something about Zillow filters and square footage. Something about how none of this was her fault. Cassie didn't listen. She was still standing outside, holding the envelope, the wind tugging softly at her sleeves. Inside, it was a single key and a handwritten note, "Whenever you're ready. E." It took less than an hour. Eleanor sat across from Howard in his private office, the windows tinted, the morning light diffused to a muted gold. No noise filtered in from the outside. The world had the decency to stay quiet while a legacy was rewritten. Howard slid a single sheet across the desk. "This is the final version. Your authority as sole trustee remains unchanged. Justin and Shannon are fully removed. Cassie's been added conditional access until she turns 25. Revocable only by your written instruction." Eleanor read every word, even though she already knew what it said. Her signature came slow but steady, each letter deliberate. When she finished, she passed it back without ceremony. "File it with the state," she said. Howard nodded and stood. "You're certain?" She looked at him, clear-eyed. "They inherited my silence for years. That was the gift. This is the correction." By early afternoon, the new trust had been filed, recorded, and notarized. Eleanor left the office with nothing in her hands but a copy of the final document, folded once, placed in her purse alongside her lipstick, and a mint tin she now filled with actual allergy medication. At 3:12 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. Texas area code. She let it ring 4 times before answering. "Eleanor?" Shannon's voice came through raw, shaky either from tears or motel air conditioning. "We're not okay. We're not anywhere. Justin's talking about staying with his coworker, but we don't even have beds. We didn't get to say goodbye." Eleanor sat in Maribel's sunroom, sipping tea from a real porcelain cup. Outside, squirrels chased each other along the fence line like they hadn't noticed the balance of the universe had shifted. Shannon's voice cracked. "Please, just talk to me." Eleanor ended the call. 5 minutes later, a text came from Justin. "I'm sorry, Mom, for everything. We didn't mean to push you. I thought we were still family." She read it twice. Then she typed back, "You pushed the pills. The house came with it." She hit send. Cassie entered the sunroom a few minutes later, fresh from a walk. Her cheeks were pink, her earbuds tucked into her hoodie pocket. Eleanor folded the phone, closed, and smiled. "Hungry?" Cassie nodded. "Starving." They made sandwiches side by side, cutting crusts, sharing kitchen space like they had always belonged to the same rhythm. No noise, no tension, no eggshells to walk on. After lunch, Eleanor pulled out the trust documents and slid them across the table. "For your records," she said. Cassie opened the folder slowly. Her name was there clear, full, unmissable. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Eleanor replied. "You just have to live in a way they never let you." Cassie hugged her tight, breathless. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling a wind chime that hadn't made a sound in weeks. A major twist number 3. Eleanor didn't just cut them off, she rewrote the future. The house is gone, but the trust lives on, secured fully for Cassie. No loopholes, no apologies, just legacy. Earned. The photo popped up on Eleanor's feed around noon. A wide-angle shot of the living room, sun pouring across the hardwood floor. The granite countertops gleamed in the background. 2 toddlers sat cross-legged on a woven rug, smiling at something outside the frame. At home, Sweet Harris. Closing day success. So grateful to call this space ours. Loved, lived, in, and ready for the next chapter. Number elder-owned. Number Heartwood charm. Number fresh start. Eleanor studied it in silence. The house looked right, like it had been stripped of performance and filled instead with purpose. She didn't like or comment, just closed the app and placed the phone upside down on the table. That evening, she made lentil soup. Not because it was cold out Cedar Park still clung to a stubborn 82 degrees, but because it had always made Cassie feel calm. The rhythm of it, the scent of bay leaf and thyme, the quiet patience in every simmer. Eleanor's new kitchen was half the size of her old one, but it worked harder. A wide window faced the backyard, where 2 clay pots waited to be filled with basil and cherry tomatoes. Cassie arrived just before 6, hair pulled into a high ponytail, a half-finished art sketch sticking out of her backpack. She dropped it on the entry bench and padded barefoot into the kitchen. "You used the big pot," she said, peeking into it. "It deserved to be used again," Eleanor replied, stirring. Cassie pulled open the drawers and began setting the table without asking where anything was, as if she'd always known. Forks on the left, glasses from the middle cabinet, cloth napkins tucked under plates, not folded on top. Maribel arrived last, bearing a loaf of rosemary bread still warm from her oven. She kicked off her shoes at the door and slid into her seat like this was the 100th time. "Smells like someone's reclaiming their seasoning," she said. They laughed. Not because the line was funny, but because it felt earned. As they sat, Maribel raised her glass of iced tea. "To replacing what doesn't serve you." Eleanor met her gaze, and seasoning with memory. They clinked glasses. Dinner passed with conversation that drifted from weather to music to the best brands of olive oil. No accusations, no surveillance, just space open and breathable. Cassie reached for a second slice of bread. "You know," she said, "it feels like this kitchen has always been here, like it waited for you." Eleanor smiled. "Maybe it did." After the table was cleared and the dishes were rinsed, Eleanor stood alone for a moment, wiping down the counters in small, circular motions. Not out of habit, out of care. She reached into the top drawer and pulled out a manila envelope. A second copy of the trust documents. She placed it behind the recipe box, next to a labeled folder marked Cassie, letters to open later. Outside, the porch light flicked on with a soft click. Inside, the kitchen stayed lit just a moment longer. The frame arrived in the mail wrapped in brown paper and twine. Eleanor unboxed it on the kitchen island, hands slow and careful, brushing away specks of packing foam. Inside the frame, the original deed to the Briggs property yellowed, embossed, and notarized in her maiden signature. Eleanor J. Briggs. She didn't hang it in her bedroom, not in the study either. She hung it right by the front door, not as a keepsake, as a receipt. Later that morning, she stepped out with her tea-green jasmine, lightly steeped and walked through her new backyard barefoot, letting the cool, dewy grass press against her soles. No sandals, no urgency. A pair of robins hopped along the fence. The basil had started to sprout. No voices, no stomping upstairs, no passive-aggressive coffee brewing meant to prove a point. Just breath and quiet. Inside, her phone buzzed. DM notification. "At Shanbriggs tagged you in a photo." Eleanor opened it. Shannon, standing beside a motel ice machine, holding a protein bar and wearing oversized sunglasses. Caption: "Still standing. Still smiling. Number never count us out." The tag didn't land. Blocked. Eleanor tapped twice and confirmed the block again for good measure. The screen asked her if she was sure. She was. A knock sounded at the front door. Cassie stood outside, holding up a thin envelope with a DMV logo on it. Her grin was cautious, almost shy. "I passed," she said. "I'm officially permitted to terrify every suburban intersection." Eleanor stepped aside to let her in. Cassie followed her into the kitchen, peeling open the envelope. "They said I just need a car now, one with brakes, and maybe a horn that doesn't sound like it's sneezing." Eleanor opened a drawer and pulled out a single set of keys, metal, cool, attached to a simple tag that read, "Toyota, title, filed." Cassie blinked. "Is this?" "Titled in your name," Eleanor said. "Insurance, too. It's not about getting away. It's about knowing you can." Cassie opened her mouth, closed it, and lunged forward in a hug instead. They stayed like that for a moment, the keys dangling loosely in one hand. Eleanor's phone buzzed again. Elaine, realtor. "Just a quick update, buyers loving the house. No issues at all. Says it feels like it was always meant for them." Eleanor tapped back. "Perfect. No forwarding address." She tucked the phone away and walked to the living room where a small box of keepsakes sat untouched. She opened her photo app, scrolled past years of images, Thanksgiving dinners, badly lit selfies Shannon had forced on her, photos of rooms that no longer belonged to her. Delete, delete, delete. She kept only a few, A picture of Cassie at age 10 with frosting on her nose, a snapshot of Maribel asleep on a lawn chair holding a crossword, and one of Eleanor herself standing on the porch of her new house in the morning light, holding a cup of tea and not smiling but peaceful. Cassie called from the driveway. "Should I back it in or just loop the cul-de-sac?" "Loop it," Eleanor called back. "Let the car stretch its legs." Cassie waved and started the engine. Eleanor leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, letting the breeze slip through the screen. Her eyes landed once more on the framed deed beside Herseland, immovable. She took a slow sip of tea, held it for a moment, then whispered to herself, just loud enough to hear. "She replaced my medicine. I replaced her address permanently."